James Chen is the former Tesla executive, current vice president of public policy at Rivian Automotive. Good morning, James. How are you, sir? It's good to have you.
Good morning. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
it is a pleasure. This is kind of one of the things that kind of snuck up on us. Had you guys heard this was coming, or did it kind of hit you, or was it because it's happened in other states? And what we are talking about, Rivian is a U.S.-based manufacturer of electric vehicles with about 11,000 employees, 4,000 of the manufacturing plant in Illinois. And when you say electric adventure vehicles, how do you describe adventure vehicles? Are they recreational vehicles?
No, so Paul, they're pickup trucks. They're pickup trucks and SUVs.
Okay. So explain a little bit to the audience the controversy here, because just a lot of people have not heard this, and the bill numbers are House Bill 833 and Senate Bill 2836, which we'll go into more detail a little bit later on another show when we get one of the members of the House and Senate on. But first of all, explain a little bit to the audience, James, exactly what the bills say.
Yeah, sure. Be happy to. And it's House Bill 833 that's starting to move through. Basically, This is nothing more than an attack on the free market. This is Mississippi law currently allows a manufacturer to choose how they're going to enter into the market. So they can choose to go through a franchise dealer, hire somebody to do all the distribution work for themselves, or they could do it themselves. So that is the state of current Mississippi law. Very free market, very open. As a U.S. manufacturer, we'd be allowed to apply for and receive a license to sell our vehicles in the state of Mississippi. And by the way, let's be clear. This is not about skirting regulation. This is about being licensed and part of the regulatory scheme. So all the consumer protections are clearly in place if we were to come into Mississippi. What these bills do is basically creates a monopoly. It basically tells manufacturer, you're not allowed to choose the best business model for yourself. You have to go through a third-party middleman between you and your customers, and that's the only way you're allowed to sell within the state of Mississippi. Now, this is, at the end of the day, this is America, and this is a great thing, is that Mississippians can still buy one of our pickup trucks. They would just have to go out of state to do it because, thankfully, the U.S. Constitution prohibits the type of restriction on a federal level that the state is looking to implement.
James, is that the same rules and regulations for Tesla as with Rivian?
It would be for, yes, any manufacturer that's coming in. So Tesla is also under these bills, would also be blocked out from being able to come into Mississippi. In fact, my understanding is from some of my former colleagues at Tesla is that Mississippi actually does have a service center right now.
Yeah, they do have. Now, how do they get that? Is that? Do they walk through all the bells and whistles, the hoops, and everything, all the red tape that a normal franchise dealer would have to do to open a franchise or a dealership in any particular town? Did they do the same thing?
Well, I can't speak specifically to what Tesla had to do to open up that service center, but under the existing law, Tesla, like anybody else, would have to go to the local regulatory authorities in Mississippi and apply for a license to be able to have a dealership that allows sales and service. So that means putting up a building, signing a lease, putting up signage, showing that they're a corporation, hiring people, and doing all of the things they would need to do to be able to receive that license from the state to be able to sell. And to
now, would they have to do that, James, in all of the places they want to sell a vehicle, or just one particular place? In other words, could they do that in Jackson, and that would suffice for the entire state?
Yeah, no. So each individual dealer location would have to be licensed. So they would have to seek a separate license for each location. We would have to seek a separate license for each location that we as Rivian wanted to put into the state of Mississippi. And this is pretty much typical throughout states that the 22 states that allow this direct sales.
I think you guys are fighting this in New York and several other states at the same time, not only Mississippi.
We are.
Is that
This
true?
is a state by
Yeah.
state. Yeah, this is a state by state nationwide battle, and more states are understanding. Look, at the end of the day, this is about free market and
Yeah.
about consumer choice. Because what is free market? It's the ability to let Mississippians choose how they want to purchase a vehicle. So in 2017, Wyoming opened up to direct sales. In 2018, Utah opened up to direct sales, and in 2020, Colorado opened up to direct sales.
What's been the effects on the what's been the effects, James, when you look at it? And I'm sure you guys have some data on this. What's been the effects of the existing franchises or the existing dealerships economically in those areas where states have allowed this?
Yeah, interestingly enough, when you look at statistics from the National Auto Dealers Association, the National Trade Association that represents franchise dealers, their own statistics show that in states that allow this direct competition, surprise, surprise, franchise dealers do even better. In fact, we recently looked at a case study in New York versus Florida. Now, New York back in 2014 shut down their state. They were open. They did allow anybody. In fact, the New York Supreme Court ruled that law at the time, New York law at the time, allowed folks like Tesla, like Rivian, although we weren't in the state at the time, did allow a manufacturer to come in, be able to apply for a license, and be able to sell directly. So the dealers were successful in passing legislation in New York to basically do what they're trying to do in Mississippi, and that is create a monopoly, close out everybody. Of course, the politicians did not want to put existing Tesla workers, because there were 5 stores there, out of work, so an exception was carved out for Tesla for 5 stores. But if you look at what happened since 2014 in New York when they shut down, and in Florida, which has always been an open state, Florida's franchise dealers have had higher profitability and higher sales all across the board of all vehicles, by the way, not just electric vehicles, of all vehicles compared to New York. So this does not hurt those local franchise dealers.
How do you service your vehicles, though? I understand you don't need an oil change, and I understand that. But if you have a problem with them, how do you service your customers who may buy a SUV or a pickup truck?
Well, that's a great question, and that's exactly why we're fighting this legislation so hard. It's because dealerships would not only like that monopoly on the sales, they want to be able to shut us out entirely from the state. Well, we don't want to be shut out of the state because we have customers that are going to be buying our vehicles in Mississippi. We not only want to be able to sell to them, we want to be able to service those vehicles by putting up those service centers at sales and service locations. We can't do that if these buildings.
Yeah, but let me be the devil's advocate here and push the other side of this. And to me, it's a lot like, well, technology is a tsunami. It's changed a lot of things from the fact that we have 2 or 3 different Amazon fulfillment centers here in our state, a brand new one not too far from here, opening up very soon. So I understand that. I understand how technology changes this. And I'm not a lawyer, but it seems like restriction of trade and a lawsuit apparently is not a good idea because you guys would probably have done it already, and it doesn't meet that level. But the other side of the coin is a lot like the wine and liquor controversy that we have going on in this state. We have some people say just put them in the grocery stores and let the grocery stores sell that, as many other states do. And I've always been an advocate saying, wait a minute, we have hometown people who are important to our hometowns across the state because we are a largely rural state. And those car dealers, thank God they're there, they employ people, and they pay a lot of taxes. So it sounds like what Rivian wants to do, as well as what Tesla wants to do, they want to come in without paying that. And is that fair to the car dealers that are existing there?
That's a good question, but let me ask you this. Why should a manufacturer have to go through a third-party middleman, which, by the way, only adds, according to the Justice Department, 7 to 10% on top of that to the price of a vehicle, okay? Now, and here's the important part to note, Paul. Rivian coming in, Tesla coming in is not going to drive these franchise dealers out of business, okay?
Okay, I want to talk more about this. We got a break coming up here, and I don't want to interrupt you. And I'll say the same thing as I said from the legislature when we were talking about this with the wine and liquor, the aforementioned, is if that happens, some of that restrictions as far as the red tape and the fees and what the existing car dealers have to pay just to operate their bricks and mortar where you would not have to ought to be alleviated. There should be some medium in there somewhere else. That's a legislative problem that has to be conquered, not yours. We'll talk more about Rivian and Tesla with James Chen. Tim Morris coming in. He'll be with us coming up at 8:05 along with Kim Hoover. We'll talk about the critical shortage of nurses in the state coming up during the 8 o'clock hour. More coming up. DIC. Back with James Chen. James is the former Tesla executive, current vice president for public policy for Rivian Automobiles. Here's a question somebody asked me on C Spire text line. If you, let's say a pickup truck or the SUV that you guys make is in a fender bender and the batteries are damaged, are the insurance companies covering that also, James?
Well, like any other car that gets into a collision, if there is significant damage, your insurance company is going to have to total the vehicle. But by the way, the fender bender and battery damage are kind of two situations that won't overlap, because the way we've designed our battery pack, it's low centered inside the frame of the vehicle underneath. And so fender bender is not going to touch the battery pack. You're going to talk about a pretty catastrophic airbag trigger type of accident to be able to get to the battery pack.
Are your plan the vehicle? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, and at that point, your vehicle is going to be totaled because the airbags would have been triggered. You would have gotten some significant damage. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
Are all the Rivians made in Illinois, or do you have more than one plant, or the batteries also made there?
So the modules, we import the cells from overseas, and we're looking, by the way, to bring that onshore to the United States. But yes, the vehicles are built 100% in Illinois, and we recently announced our second factory location in December of last year is going to be built in Georgia. These vehicles are American-made by American workers for the American public, and that's an important part. A lot of folks have asked, if you could allow me to segue for a second, why is Rivian doing this? Okay, this is, at the end of the day, about American technology in leadership in EV technology, electric vehicle technology. And the electric vehicle, frankly, is the platform for modern transportation technology, including things like semi-autonomous and eventually autonomous driving. We're not quite there yet, but we're in a race. We're in a race against foreign powers to be on top of that. And why is this so important? Because if you think about what autonomous driving is, it's machine learning. Machine learning is another fancy way of saying artificial intelligence. And who do we want to be leading that charge? Well, that's got to be the United States. This is something I feel very, very, very deeply about, because my parents were immigrants from Taiwan. And I know that, and having grown up seeing it, that the Chinese are dead set again on being the leaders in this technology and running this leadership. We cannot let that happen. This has got to be a U.S. technology again by the United States.
Again, you understand you understand the problem we have as far as the infrastructure that's there, regardless of the state, whether it's New York or any other places, that there are some pushback on this one. Trying to be protective of the infrastructure of business in the small hometown or all hometowns across the nation. So, my question is, why not? How much cheaper can you sell that SUV than a GMC or a Chevy or a Ford GMC of the same kind on the same platform? Because of your model, how much cheaper can you sell it than they can sell it for off the dealer? And God knows they're having difficulty for trying to get inventory now because of the supply chain and the chips. So how much cheaper can you do this than them?
Well, it's not just about being cheaper. It's about being more efficient, Paul, and not just on the price, but on the technology itself. I mentioned how much technology is in this vehicle. This is a connected vehicle, and when we're connected to those vehicles, with owner permission, by the way, if the owner doesn't want to be connected, they can simply, turn that monitoring off, just like on your cell phone. But the idea is so that we're monitoring the vehicle, making sure it's optimized. So if there are any issues with that vehicle, we can reach out to you right away. We can't do that through a third-party dealer. We won't do that through a third-party dealer. And let me ask you this. This is the United States. Mississippi has gotten it right. Why does the legislature want to dictate to an American company how it runs its business model when Mississippi's got it right now? And there are no harms to existing small businesses. We're not saying that this is an either or situation, Paul. This is not about whether or not you let Tesla and Rivian come in and push out all the franchise dealers. That won't happen. The idea is that the marketplace is big enough that you allow entrants to come in, including Rivian and Tesla, who will hire local people, provide that training for new technology jobs, employ Mississippians, or do you keep them out in favor of local interests to create a monopoly?
How does this work? Let's just say when we got off, I ordered an SUV. How does this work? I call Rivian at the number there, and take me past that. How does this work?
Yeah, so we'll connect you with a product specialist, and that product specialist will walk you through what you want for your vehicle. What you want in terms of features, what kind of amenities you want. And you can do this on the phone or you can do this online. We'll walk you through the ordering process. You can put your deposit down. We'll work with your financer, or we provide partnerships with financing of our own. And then that vehicle gets built in Illinois and then shipped to you and delivered. And eventually, we would like to get to the point where we're expanding, that we actually have a physical location. And you asked earlier, Paul, and I wanted to circle back to make sure I was answering all your questions. How is this different from the beer, wine, and liquor industry that you guys are looking at as to how that's distributed? Well, the important part is most people don't need to test drive a beer or a glass of wine. You do want to test drive a vehicle. And if this legislation goes through, then we won't be able to establish locations. You won't be able to see, touch, feel the vehicle, and you certainly won't be able to test drive it.
All right. Well, now, James, here's where I'm confused, because basically, I mean, one of the lines in the article that you wrote here, it says, direct sales is about the ability to consumers to access vehicles in their home state. You can order a Tesla, Rivian, or Lucid vehicle online in all 50 states, which means, I guess, in Mississippi. But direct sales is about the ability for drivers to test drive and interact with the vehicle and discuss product specifications and pricing. So right now, I could order it and get it to me, but and I'll have to pay the same kind of taxes as I do in a regular combustion engine.
Sure.
But I can't test drive it first. I've got to order it without seeing it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what this law would do. That law would say basically you would have to either travel out of state, so you'd have to come to us in Illinois to see or touch the vehicle, or you would have to order it sight unseen. If the law stays the same, and let's be clear, this is an attempt to change existing Mississippi law. Mm-hmm. If the law stays the same, we could come in, apply for that license, set up that showroom, and then you could come to Jackson, Mississippi, or wherever you live and where our stores are located, come in and test drive that vehicle and have that conversation with that salesperson.
All right. Why? How does that differ? How does that differ from a regular franchise of GM or Ford?
Well,
they have a showroom.
Yep, that's true. They do, but you don't have that third-party middleman. When you're talking to somebody at Rivian, you're talking to the company.
So in other words, you're not paying the dealer. You're not paying the dealer franchise fee.
You're not paying the dealer franchise fee, and you're not paying that what they call the ADM, additional dealer markup. I think you might have seen stories about how there are dealers. In fact, there's one dealer in my home state of Virginia that has a markup of $30,000 on the Ford F-150 Lightning. That's above the MSRP. So they're asking for $30,000 more with nothing that the dealer's adding onto the vehicle. You're just padding that dealer's bottom line. Now, a free market would say that if you've got competition, if you've got someone who sells a Rivian, who's selling a Rivian, Tesla who's selling a Tesla, and you've got Ford through their dealer who's selling that vehicle, you as the consumer get to choose where you want to go. And that can only help drive down prices because of competition.
I understand that, and I can see it from both ways. As a consumer, when we've gone through this, James, when the great debate for do we put 7% sales tax on things on the internet with nobody here, no logistical plant that's here, and we certainly moved it up to 7%. But in this particular case, it's the people who own the car dealerships and truck dealerships across the state haven't asked and requested that franchise fee. It's something that's there, and they have to pay it. So one way or the other, I'm hoping this comes together, that it doesn't. And then most of these dealers right now are having a very difficult time. But you're saying you're eliminating the salespeople, to which, we tried that during Saturn for the most part as far as bargaining. But you order it directly from the company, but you can go test drive one before you buy if the law stays the way it is right now, and if this bill fails, is what you're basically saying.
That is correct. That is about allowing Mississippi consumers to see, touch, drive the vehicle, and have that conversation with the salesperson in state.
It's a remarkable argument on both sides. It's not one of those easy things, and it's one of those perfect examples, James, of where people make up their mind when they hear the initial story. But it's good to have both sides of the story, and I hope we have presented that. I do appreciate it, sir. I'd love to get you back on at a later date and talk more about the vehicle itself. James, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.